All right, folks. We know we've got some folks on that are not typically in this meeting on Fridays because we're having a special discussion about electronic visit verification. We usually get started about 11:03. So we'll wait just couple more minutes to get a few more folks to join. But I do see that we're already at just about 40. So like I said, we'll give a couple more minutes for folks to join. Carol Wilhelm, do you want to co-present on EVV with me today?
Do I want to what, huh?
Do you want to? I said, do you want me to put you on the spot so you can co-present about EVV with me today?
I know just that they got to do it.
Oh, good. I'm glad that you and I have that same amount of knowledge. But that's why we invite guest speakers. And my confidence certainly got a little bit better when I saw that Jennifer Parsons had already logged into this meeting this morning. So we know that we're going to have. There she is. Look at that. She even gave us a wave. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
So we usually get rolling here about 11:03 once we have about 40 folks on, and we should probably have 60, maybe 70 by the time we get to that point here in a few minutes. Or not. Maybe the EVV people will have decided that they understand it all. They've taken advantage of all of the DDS meetings. They've attended them. They fully understand their responsibilities. Everyone's completely signed up and ready to go. Maybe. Hey, Jean, I forgot that we need to announce about the rate study meeting for the transportation vendors. That email that I sent yesterday. So I will go over that. I'll share the screen and show DDS's website with it. All right, folks, just certainly want to take, advantage of folks' time that logged in right away, and we'll want to go over what we're going to be discussing today. So my name is John Decker. I'm the Director of Community Services at Alta California Regional Center. This is Coffee with Community Services. This meeting is being recorded by popular demand, and it will be posted on our website. We do apologize. We know that there was a few weeks that we fell behind on getting these posted onto YouTube, and they are, I believe, up to date now. And I'm going to shut off my Outlook so that I don't have a bunch of emails popping me up and distracting. So we've got some community services staff here today. So good morning, Odelia and Shirley. See you guys. Good morning. And we've got Gino Nessi, our community services manager. And we're going to have some client services managers, more than that. We typically have Dana almost every week in these meetings, but I think we're going to have a few more possibly to pop in. So Carol Wilhelm is here as well. Carol oversees our SLS and Deaf Services unit at Alta, and Dana, of course. Good morning, Dana, one of our client services managers, and Heidi, who is also a regular participant. Good morning, Heidi, from our Grass Valley office. And let's see, we have Jordan Eller, another one of our Alta Community Services managers, and good morning, Jason, as well, our specialist. And I think I said hi to Hewitt, our emergency coordinator, but if not, good morning, Hewitt. And Olivia, another one of our community services managers, and Zach, my assistant as well, who has logged in this morning. And again, I'm sure we'll have a few more folks that log in as we go along. So we're at 63 participants right now. And again, it's 11:05. So we're going to give you the agenda. So we're looking at initial discussion about EVV. You're not going to learn everything about EVV in the time that we're going to go over this. As always, we want to connect you with the resources that are out there. So we're going to go over the resources that DDS has already made available. And then we have Jennifer Parsons with us from the Department of Developmental Services. And Jennifer, can you introduce yourself and explain to people what your job is at the department?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. I really appreciate the invitation to your coffee hour. I'm Jennifer Parsons. I'm the program manager for EVV at the department, and I'm part of a project team with other state agencies working to implement EVV throughout California, all under Department of or agencies umbrella. So that would include DSS, DHCS, and CDA and CDPH.
Yeah, having everyone being required to implement it at the same time is certainly a huge undertaking, and appreciate all the support and technical support being provided by the department for this. So we're going to get into that discussion first. We're going to get into EVV. We're going to go over those things. We're going to talk where we're at on COVID numbers. We're going to talk about continued COVID rapid test distribution. We're going to talk about the COVID rapid test distribution that we're going to be doing along with community care licensing which that will be the first that we've talked about it here or anywhere. We're going to talk about the extension of the booster mandate. I think Olivia's going to cover that one. And then we're going to discuss just a little update on the rate study stuff, and then what the upcoming meetings are at DDS as well, because we've got some upcoming meetings. So, for Jennifer's sake, she doesn't know all of you service providers. So if you are in the chat and you provide the following services, so respite, so service codes 465, 862, 864, supported living, homemaker, or PA, if you have one of those types of services, can you put your name in the chat box and the company that you're representing today? It's just, this will give Jennifer a good idea to know who all she's reaching out to today, because there's a lot, was there 300 plus people on the last EVV webinar, Jennifer, I believe?
Yeah, a little over 300. We did have 630 registered, but I think once folks find out that we post that afterwards, time may have had to been spent elsewhere. So.
And I will say, first off, thank you so much that the department has changed to doing that, where we now have the access to be able to watch recordings of the meetings, because it does not always fit into it. And I will tell you, that is also what kind of didn't pressure us, but certainly convinced us that we needed to record these meetings and put them on YouTube, was because we wanted to kind of mirror what the department's doing and making sure that folks, don't have to be logged in at a certain time to be able to get the same information. So again, you guys are putting your information in the chat, and we certainly will make sure that we share that with Jennifer as well. And again, she can see who all is on here. But we've got a lot of providers on, and we're going to kind of jump to it. We're at about 74 right now. So EVV, how we're going to do this is I will share my screen and then go through some of the different resources, and then we'll also allow Jennifer to kind of comment as we go through, and then she will be the person that can actually answer questions that come up as well. Maybe I will try to answer, and then she'll give you the correct answer after I try. One of those two things. We'll figure it out. So first thing I want to do, which is what I always do, which is share my screen and show you how to find this information. And I just see that another one of our community services specialists, Kelsey Rainey, has joined us this morning. Good morning, Kelsey. So we've encouraged, thank you. We've encouraged, our service providers that we want to make sure that you are aware of what EVV is, even if it's not something that specifically applies to your vendorization, because I think it's really important that you are aware of what clients and families are now required to do. And Gina and I were talking about the old parental verification forms that came out about 10, 11 years ago. Jennifer Bloom remembers those. Jennifer Bloom's joined us as well, one of our associate client services directors. After working so late last night, doing an excellent presentation along with our other associate directors to our board of directors. Thank you for joining us today. And so with the EVV, what we will encourage folks to do in trying to find this information is to go to DDS website. And I will say, this morning, I was thinking, man, DDS really, it makes this hard to find. I just don't know where it's at. And unfortunately, I did not look at the quick links, which has it literally right on the front page, right here. So quick links, click on electronic visit verification, and this is like the landing page. And DDS has a number of these for their different initiatives and things that they're working on. So the way this is set up is in essence kind of mirrored with the DS Task Force and the DS Task Force work groups as well. So let me do this. I wonder, Jennifer, if I can help you possibly narrate as I go through these different, sections, like what they're intended for. So first off, you have the listing of meetings here. And we noticed that there's some meetings that are hosted by you guys. There's some meetings that are hosted by Sandata. There's so can you explain a little bit about the different types of meetings that you guys are having? And then what would you encourage for, you've got a long list of all these providers that this applies to. What would you recommend as far as their meeting attendance?
So yeah, thanks. DDS has a monthly EVV webinar, and you can see right here where the registration will be posted. If you're on our notification list, you'll get an email saying, hey, we're having a webinar, please register. So that's the first thing that I would recommend. If you want to be on the notification list, you can see under that contact information, there's that EVV email that comes right to us and right to staff here that monitor that notification list. So that's kind of the first piece. And then looking under the previous stakeholder meetings, the ones that are DDS hosted, those are ones that are our monthly webinars. And in November, we had a demonstration from Sandata. So it was more technical in nature, and it walked through the Cal EVV portal and showed folks, here's how you enter client information. Here's how you would look at a visit, for example. And so that's why Sandata hosted that one. It was just super technical, and that was before any of us at the department had a chance to play in that environment and explain it in any meaningful way. So we shouldn't have been doing it at that time.
So don't make that the first one that you watch.
No, I wouldn't make that the first one. If you really want an overview of what is EVV and what do I need to do, take a look at the July webinar. That is the best one to start with for providers. And it tells you which provider codes need to comply, all the high level overview. On Wednesday, we'll be posting, well, probably even Tuesday, the next webinar that we just did this past Tuesday, and that talks about some of the onboarding stuff on the other tabs we'll get to. So if you're on our notification list, you'll also find out when that gets posted. And I would recommend starting with July and then going right up to, okay, so now what do I need to do about it, which would be this one from January.
So the first request for every single person that wrote their name in that chat box, if they have not signed up for EVV notifications, you want them to do that right now.
I think it would be helpful so that you're staying on top of things. And if you are here, but you provide home health care services, or you're here this morning and you provide self-determination services, those are next on our list for implementation. So signing up for notification to find out when it's your turn would be my next advice, yeah.
So even looking at, we've got a number of our managers. I said we had, Jennifer, and now we have Johnny Zhang, another one of our associate client services directors with us as well. So even looking at our own staff, looking at that overview, I had the opportunity to participate on, that was Tuesday, right? I think the meeting was. And so I thought that was a very good overview, and that's going to be recorded, right? So that's a recorded.
It was recorded.
And then, so they can watch the recording, because we don't have the recording from the July meeting, right? We have the presentation. Correct. So for those of you that, and I thought it was helpful too, because people got to hear questions from service providers, right? And we'll get into questions. And I think we know what the number one question has been so far, which is,
I bet.
I'm not signed up yet. Is this connected to e-billing, and am I still going to be able to bill? And so we will certainly touch on that. We can touch on having unsupported billing as well. We're kind of in an area where we are ensuring initial compliance right now, and really want to encourage everyone to get going as quickly as possible with this. I don't think anyone's in a punitive type of situation right now. We just want to get folks signed up and understanding how to do it. So next week, we will have this posted up. You said Tuesday for that stakeholder information meeting, and then the PowerPoint would be available as well. So before you jump into watching immediately the Sandata information, maybe try to get some of the foundational stuff first instead of the technical stuff, because that's all right. Thank you.
Yeah, a little more of the why. Yep.
Perfect. So meetings, right? So that's that first tab that we have here, and then it goes into the about, and we've seen this in a lot of different places, especially trying to explain to people the simplicity of it, right? That these are these 6 things that you're looking for. So anything in this about section that you think that we should highlight?
Just making sure that if you pick a solution that you're aware of the 6 data points and that those need to be electronically captured. And that is the purpose. And if you're really interested in the Cures Act, looking at that document and understanding the intent behind why it's a federal requirement that CMS has put forth, which is to make sure that people get the services that are in their IPP. Because sometimes, again, the why is super helpful about things being implemented.
And I think when we get to maybe alternate EVV solutions, maybe you can have an explanation why you said if you choose something, make sure it covers these 6 areas, right? Okay.
Yep.
All right, so next we go to consumers and families. And again, we have, obviously representation from our children's units here and everything else. I don't know the extent to which service coordinators have started hearing questions from clients or families related to it, but certainly a message here that explains it. Is there anything specifically consumer family based as far as information meetings that have occurred already or that are in the works for this?
We put out a newsletter. It was intended to be pretty frequent, but then we got wrapped up with implementation. And so we'll probably pick back up on that newsletter, and that goes out to folks. But really the message to families and consumers is that EVV will not change how you receive services. So if you feel that it is, have that conversation with your care provider or your service coordinator, or if you're fearful that it will, have that conversation. But also, I think the largest concern for consumers that we heard was that they felt like they would be tracked all day, and that using a GPS, so I'll just put it right out there. The state solution, CalEVV, does have an app that people can use to clock in and clock out on, and it captures the visit at that moment and the location where that's done. It doesn't track you throughout the day, because maybe you go and do whatever it is you're going to go do all day long. It doesn't capture the location of all the places that you go. It just assures that this is where the location happened, which, as you saw, was one of the 6 data points and is a requirement. So that's the biggest question that we get from consumers.
Just real quickly, they just want to note that there are the EVV newsletters that are right here available on DDS's website. And refresh my recollection, were you guys looking at doing, I know you guys did your frequently asked questions in English and Spanish. Were you guys looking at putting out any additional materials in other languages like the newsletters?
We can have them translated if that's a request that folks have. I don't know how much interest we've had in the newsletters recently, so maybe when we put them back out, that would be something, if that's something your folks would be interested in having, just letting us know.
Okay, what I will do real quickly is I just wanted to share Alta's website, and I know we talked about this previously, but for Alta, when we put out our newsletter, our Alta Connections newsletter, we included it in Spanish and English, and we talked about the electronic visit verification. So we had I think it was Charlotte Coco, it was one of our providers, had mentioned in this meeting when we're going to start talking about electronic visit verification more. And so in Alta's newsletter, we included the information about the electronic visit verification. You can recognize those 6 different areas. And then attached to the newsletter, we included DDS's frequently asked questions about EVV. So this went out to like 8,000 plus people that are signed up, clients, family members, everything. And then the Spanish version of your FAQs was attached to the Spanish version of our newsletter. So what I would say is, at least for us, we would encourage the department, if you guys are interested in doing more and more of this information, we don't want clients and families that don't speak English to not be able to have the same opportunity to be able to review this stuff. And some of it's kind of technical as well. And so even for our staff that speak different languages, it might be helpful for them to have it in writing, some of the technical type things. So, and for you all, as Alta California Regional Center service providers and staff and everything else, I think we will continue to at least provide ongoing the information related to EVV always to those providers that fall under those service codes. And I can certainly talk to Jennifer and Johnny and the ADs more about this, but looking at maybe trying to do more targeted information to our clients and families as well. And so when we do that, I think it'd be great to have it in the other languages, if at all possible. So consumer and families, again, the EVV newsletters, and the last one we had out was in October. The frequently asked questions were just updated in November, which is not long ago. So let me move over to the next section, which is specifically for providers. And we've got a number of different things in this section. So maybe I'll have you, Jennifer, maybe you can walk us through this section.
Sure. So the first thing to take note of is that we tried to make it step by step. Enrolling in EVV and getting registered, it takes a bit of a process. And so we didn't want anyone kind of struggling, like what happens next? What happens after I finish this? So that's the intent behind this tab. Also on the step-by-step onboarding, that first sentence there's a PDF that you can download that has the same steps. So if you're a person that likes to print something out and cross it off, we've got that tool there for you.
Let's check it out.
There you go.
Oh, that's great.
Yep, and exactly the same. So if you get stuck someplace and you email us at the department and you say, well, I'm on step 4 and I don't understand XYZ, we know we're communicating and saying the same thing. We know right where you're at and we can help provide information. And the same with if you need to communicate for any technical issues when contacting customer care folks at Sandata. So those steps are outlined.
I think what we will do is we will send this out separately. So Olivia will, either you or me or Christine or whomever, we'll send this directly out to all the people that are under this service code so that you have this document itself. Because I love that idea. I love that you guys have hundreds and thousands of service providers throughout the state that are looking at implementing this. And if you can get on the same page with what the steps are and be able to communicate to DDS where you're at on these steps and the challenges that you're having, I assume that you're going to get your responses faster, more accurate, from the department that's trying to deal with service providers all over the place that are trying to do their best to understand this. So let's make sure we send this out like Monday or to everyone via email. So providers, you guys are going to get that.
Cool, thank you. And if you think that we've missed a step or can explain it better, open to input. Happy to update that going forward.
Now, would you recommend that we send an email to the evv@dds.ca.gov if there is any things that we might want changed related to that?
Yeah, that's the spot. If you felt we missed something in a step, please let us know.
Again, we do things like this and we give you this information because you have opportunities to make a difference. If you notice something on the step-by-step onboarding that did not make sense for you, that may well apply to 100 other vendors that aren't quite where you're at right now. So please just, everyone doing this, at the same time, we would love it if you could just take a look at these materials if you haven't got signed up yet and make sure that you understand it and you can explain it to your staff and reach out to DDS to provide them technical assistance, because they don't run your guys' businesses. They don't interact like that same way. And so they need to hear that feedback from you guys. And even though many folks, like Jennifer herself, was one time a vendor of our regional center, so they're familiar with our, that service system. We want to ensure that they have all the feedback that they need from us. So thank you very much for that opportunity. And we know the email box is evv@dds.ca.gov.
Thank you. Yeah, and just a lot of the tips that I spoke about on Tuesday's webinar came from vendors that were somewhere in that process and said, oh, you should really mention. Oh yeah, thank you. Good to know. Took a note and then included that in the next webinar, because as folks learn, so do we. So it's helpful. So next you see the same FAQs, both in English and Spanish, same link. And then starting off with step number 1, it helps you recognize that everybody needs to self-register. So self-registration is a process where you identify who you are, what services you provide, what regional center you work with, maybe more than one. Maybe you have more than one vendor ID, for example, but that gets your information over to the customer care team at Sandata so they can begin to build an account for you.
Jennifer, I have a question though.
Yeah.
But the regional centers, we had a list that we submitted to the department of who all the point of contacts were. So does that mean that if for some reason that was some agency was not included on that list, they can always still add to the list of registration just because they weren't on that initial list of point of contacts that the regional center put out there? Obviously, they can still, self-register.
Actually, it's a little bit of flip on that. So what happened was we collected a lot of information from regional centers, and I know that you guys reached out to providers to get that contact information for the initial contact. Mm-hmm. Not all the departments on the project were able to do that. And so self-registration will trump that list. So self-registration has become the requirement. But what is so beautiful about all the work that you guys already did is now it's easier for us to understand who hasn't had an opportunity yet to self-register. And so then outreach can happen and say, oh, you put your information and your contact information on this list in September. It helped us recognize that you haven't taken that step to self-register, so please do so. And so communications like that will be coming out. And so work was not done for nothing. It's been extremely helpful for the department and for outreach. And I feel for the other provider agencies that don't have that, honestly. So it's actually really helpful for us.
So you have the self-registration link right here.
Mm-hmm.
And there it is.
Yep.
Is it one page?
It's one page with 5 elements. That's it. And there's a little help tab over on the side there that tells you what each of those things are. And the webinar that we did on Tuesday gives you some helpful hints that we learned from other providers about filling this out. The biggest questions that I get in the inbox here at the department are, well, if I'm a mom and I'm vendored with the regional center, what's my agency name? That makes no sense to me. Valid point. The agency name would be whatever your vendor, whatever you vendored as. So for me, I put Jennifer Parsons. Yeah, exactly. And so I'm also the contact person. So further down, I would be the agency contact. My name would be on here twice. Little things like that, and some of the language, because this form fits all of the departments that will be using it, right? And so if there's some clarity that's needed, there's the help tab on the left, and there's also a quick reference guide back on the web page for on the DDS webpage. So if you want to download a quick reference guide that takes you through the steps and provides you more information as well while you're self-registering, you can do that.
Hey, Jennifer, real quickly, I want to just get an idea for those that are registered, and maybe I'll pick on Michelle Ramirez from On My Own, because she says, I'm just wondering what the recommendation is from the department when it comes to who you should have as the point of contacts. You know, would you think that executive director would be the appropriate point of contact, or possibly the executive director's, you know, executive assistant possibly, or a manager? Like, you know, look, what are the expectations of those points of contact that you're
It's a good question. And while we won't dictate who that should be, it will be the person that the provider agency trusts to go through the initial training and the initial security training. And the reason why that's important is because the initial security training and this initial contact person will be the first person to go into the portal and set up other users. So if someone wants to delegate that to somebody, that's fine. Just know that that person has the authority then to create additional users that would be administrator level users in your application. And
for our organization, chose Melissa, our payroll specialist, because she has a very intimate knowledge of our timekeeping system, and she knows and she tracks everything to make sure that all the shifts are claimed and the times are correct. And so it just made sense that she would be the person to be our representative, so our contact.
So Jennifer, let's pretend I run my own, SLS agency, and I put myself down. I'm the executive director, and I put myself down. But I don't want to be that person anymore. I want someone else to be the point of contact. Do providers have the ability to change who their agency's point of contact is?
Actually, you can add to it and then change it if you wanted to. So we've got a lot of folks that we've been talking to who are self-vendored, and they have their own SLS agency for their care, and then for also other folks, and staff of maybe 10 to 20 people. And so what they're doing is they're setting up as agency contact so that they get all the security training and understand what's going on. And then they go into the portal and add other administrators so that someone else can do all the data entry because they didn't really want to do that part. So there's 4 different levels that you can set up once you have access to your account. And the administrator has all the rights. There's a coordinator where you can just review visits. There's different roles within there. So the owner and CEO could go through and designate different people to do different things and add and remove and change their contact information all within that space.
Excellent. And I appreciate, thank you very much, Michelle, for sharing who you chose within your agency, because I think that's a great position to be responsible for what we just heard Jennifer describe. So this seems like a relatively straightforward, easy way to do the self-registration. We know that there's the help, which has multiple questions that help answer the different, well, help give more information about the different questions that are on there. So I will close that out now unless anyone has any specific questions about the self-registration form.
If I could I have you click on a button for me so I can show you folks something?
Sure, which button?
If you, yeah, shimmy down a bit and go to the provider identifier. In that, oops, up a little bit.
There it is.
There you go. So if you click on add, if you are a regional center provider, I just want to tell you what to put in here because entering data here is pretty important. So for department, if you click on that, you'll see the drop down. You provide services via the regional center for DDS. So that's your choice. So let's click that one. You won't create an account, I promise, John.
Perfect.
And then jurisdictional entity, click on that. That's your regional center, and you'll see all the choices. So you work with Alta.
So if I'm doing this for, let's say I'm on my own agency, am I doing one of these for Alta and one of them for North Bay Regional Center?
Yes.
Okay.
And if on my own provides more than one service type. So we can go through that as well. The provider identifier type.
Which several of these providers do offer multiple.
Okay. Okay, let's play with that a little bit. So the provider type that you want to put in is always DDS vendor ID. If you put in your EIN, you're going to have a hard time linking to your visits and you'll have to correct that information later. If you've already done it under an EIN or NPI or one of the other choices, information about how to fix that is coming out soon. But for DDS, you want to put in your vendor ID, and then the identifier is that vendor ID, right? Which is usually 2 letters and 4 numbers.
Oops.
Yep. Or if you're old school, it'd be 1 letter and 5 numbers, but either way. So then you click submit.
Okay. Shall I click it? I'm so nervous.
If we go really bad, I'll let customer care know we made a boo-boo.
All right. Well, we'll put Michelle Ramirez's name on it from on my
Okay, so that shows the record I created. Now let's say under this identifier, under HA0001, I also provide care with VMRC, Valley Mountain. I would go back in and add that, and I would add the exact same record, but I would choose Valley Mountain.
Okay, so in this time, and then I'm making sure that I'm updating and I'm using my Valley Mountain Regional Center vendor number and not my Alta California Regional Center vendor number.
Unless they happen to be the same, because sometimes things like that happen. Yeah. But if they're different, you enter the different one. That's correct.
Excellent. And so am I of the same thought that if I have multiple vendor numbers as part of my company, so for example, I might have one vendor number for my ILS program, but I have a different vendor number for my SLS program, that I'm just adding those?
Right. However, ILS isn't required to do EVV. Yeah. So yes, personal assistance and SLS often go together. So yes, I would put both vendor ID numbers in there under Alta.
Perfect. Yep. All right, and we can go ahead and delete this one so it doesn't become a future one, right? And then for the address,
business address.
Yeah, it would be the business address that applies for each vendorization, right? So if you've got a business address in one catchment area, right?
Right now it'd be the business, because you can only add one here. So this would be the business address for the person that's going to be your main contact.
Okay. Okay. Questions that folks have? Relatively straightforward. I see a hand. Go ahead, Jen. You can unmute yourself.
Can you hear me? I've already gone through this process, but I made some mistakes. And did I hear you say, Jennifer, that you'll be getting some instructions on how to change things soon?
Yeah, Jen, we sure will. And depending on the kind of mistake you may have made, it may be a showstopper, right? Because maybe the mistake was the wrong email address. Well, you're not going to get any subsequent information. So I would ask that you would email the department and let us know that. But if you entered an EIN instead of a vendor ID, that doesn't stop your onboarding process and you going through training and such. it will affect some of your data. So that's something that we'll be in contact with you to fix.
Okay. Okay. I think it went through, but I know I wasn't perfect, so I was going for perfection.
We often do, and yeah, sometimes we don't make it, and we totally get that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So for just someone that wants to clarify or verify whether or not they did it, they certainly have the EVV email address that they can reach out to as well.
Absolutely. And so the department can support you with looking up to see that information. If you've registered and it's been 48 hours since you've registered and you haven't received a follow-up email with some training information, and you're going to use the let me back up. If you're going to use the Cal EVV system and you haven't received a training email, then you want to let me know at that EVV inbox. If you've registered and you selected to use an alternate solution and not the Cal EVV state system, it might take about a week or two for you to hear, because it may be that the customer care team at Sandata is contacting the vendor that you've selected and helping get that set up before they reach out with you.
Jennifer, I've obviously heard quite a bit about people not using the Cal EVV and looking at the, what do you call them, third party or alternative.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain a little bit about that? Like why, why
Okay.
is that an option? Or a lot of people, does it seem like a lot of people are utilizing that option?
Yeah, so data-wise, about a third of providers that are registering are saying, we're going to use our own solution. And that's typically because they've got a payroll system or a case management system they're already using that has an EVV component in it that's already capturing those 6 data points. So the department doesn't endorse any of those, but there's some names out there like TheraP or Paycom. Those are case management or payroll systems that you already use that may have those components. So if you've got that already, check with them and see if they have that component, because then you would maybe want to just add that to a service you're already using. If you don't already have that in place, some providers still, use paper timesheets, and that's totally fine. And so you might want to use the state's system, which is Cal EVV, because it's free to you to use. It doesn't cost the providers anything to pay. The state is paying for that to provide a free system. And the reason we provide the choice is because the CARES Act allows us to have an open approach like that. And we thought that because a third of providers in 2018 or 17 told us we would want to use our own, we wanted to make sure we had both options.
Excellent. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen because that's, I think, the next question that comes up.
Cool.
Or the next section here. Let's see. All right. So I think we're on about number 3, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So this tells you what to expect. Once you've completed that and you're going to use an alternate solution, you go to step 4, and step 4 walks you through that the alternate steps. This is what you should expect next. And when something doesn't happen along those steps, you can see the very bottom thing on step 4 there is who you would contact. And technical questions would go to the customer care team at Sandata working with alt vendors, because that's who you indicated in self-registration you'd be using. If under number 3 you said, no, I'm going to use the free solution from the state, Cal EVV, then you skip and go down to step number 5. And number 5 has the steps that you would expect to see after self-registration is completed. And then also at the very bottom, technical questions for folks that will be using the Cal EVV system. There's an email and phone number there.
So the first thing is that if you did that and you did not receive that email within 48 hours, that may have been an issue.
If you registered and said,
I'm sorry,
I'm sorry, John.
I was just saying, yeah.
If you registered and you said you're going to use the state system, the Cal EVV system, about 48 hours after registration, you should get an email with some training for you. If you self-registered and you said you're going to use the alternate system, I would give it a week to 2 for the customer care team at Sandata to get a hold of you to say, either we're working with the solution that you chose and we're getting them going, or that solution that you chose has already been cleared to work in California. So we're just going to start collecting your data from them and giving you the date by which that'll probably start. And then they're there to answer any of your questions as well.
It is not uncommon for emails from the department, from the state, sometimes to end up in our spam email boxes. And so I would encourage everyone, especially Alta staff. I will tell you, I ran my Alta email and I found 5 emails in 1 month that I needed to read that ended up in our little email quarantine. And so I hope internally all of you are checking that as very frequently. But for those of you that are registering for these things, please check and make sure that it didn't end up in that, because that might be the first question that gets asked when you call DDS and they say, oh, and you say I didn't get the email. They might say, oh, did you check your quarantine, to make sure that it's not in there. So again, thank you. We've got the step-by-step here for this section. And then as you mentioned, the email to ask the questions, and there's a phone number associated with it as well. So that's our providers tab that we have here. And then the alternate EVV solutions. What do we have here?
So these first 2 pieces, the specifications is a link to the Sandata website. Sandata works with folks across the country, but California has very specific information that an alternate vendor has to meet data-wise in order to work with us here in California. So I'll just keep picking on TheraP because they're a common name that folks know. Let's say TheraP works in Idaho with Sandata. That's all great, but they need to go through California's process because there's some differences in what California wants to collect or not collect. Like we don't want any social security numbers. Well, that might be a requirement elsewhere, and it's not here. So those, if you contact your provider, your payroll provider, and say, I'm going to register to use you, you can guide them to that alternate providers tab, and they can look at the specifications that the data specifications that they'll need to meet for California. There's also a user guide for that data specifications right underneath it, and that's all downloadable there.
I think it's like you have the CaliVV, and then you have the third-party ones, the alternates, and it all gets into the aggregator, right?
Yep. That's why everybody needs to register, because eventually everyone's going to want to access their data in the aggregator to see what California has on file for you. And then there's the email again and a phone number for folks using an alternate system. Like, you haven't contacted me. I self-registered 2 weeks ago and I haven't heard from you. Why? Ask them. That's what they're there for. And then
and we have guidance and notifications possibly coming up in the future here.
Yep, we expect something coming out soon, probably in the next, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. So that goes out to usually letter to Regional Center for Guidance, and then we'll send out a notification to our folks that are on the interest list, and then we'll post it here again. So if you want to keep abreast of those notifications for any guidance documents, email us at that EVV inbox, and we'll be sure to get you on the list.
So looks like there's some statewide information here about the implementation on the right-hand side, obviously resources outside of DDS that people could certainly take a look at if they wanted to get a little bit more foundational maybe information.
Yeah, absolutely, but the CDSS one is important because that's in-home support services, right? And so and for regional center providers, that's a generic resource that has to be exhausted for our consumers first. They are in-home support services are also working on EVV. And so this is information about how that might affect services for in-home support staff and if your consumers receive in-home support. So if you have a question about in-home support, this is where you would go, and contact information for them is on this page. And you'll notice that they're EVV phase 1. And so phase 1 is in-home support services, IHSS. Phase 2 is the services that are provided under DDS and a few other departments.
And all right, there you go. So that information is available right there as well. We already gave you the contact information. You've heard about the newsletter. You've heard about the FAQs. So let me ask you this. So we've covered a lot of information, and we talked about what's going to be upcoming. Is there anything else that you want to highlight before we start seeing kind of what questions folks have?
No, I think pretty thorough. I would say that the best, even if you get an email from the department because you're on that notification list and you didn't care to get it, you can just delete it. But not getting information, I would actually feel bad that if we weren't getting information out to folks, I just feel like I wouldn't have done a good job. So if you know of someone who wants that email address, or if you need it, share this information with providers in your community if you know that they're needing to comply, because getting information out is what we need to be doing right now and getting folks registered.
I know we sent out this invitation, widely to folks and specifically to those service codes. So, just again, our commitment from Alta is we're going to continue to send out to those service providers that fall under those service codes any information that we receive from the department, and we're going to continue to encourage you all to participate in the webinars that are going on. I am taking on the EVV position at Alta. I'm going to be the EVV person for the next 4 or 5 months until I probably give it to Nicole Smith to take over. Hi, Nicole. Thank you for joining us today. But Gina and I have been talking about that for a while. But for you all as service providers, we need to make sure that I fully understand this, though I can make sure that I can provide all the supports to you all as well. And so that's, again, for now, at least I'm the point of contact with DDS as it relates to EVV. So now I want to open it up to folks that have questions, whether you're a regional center staff or whether you are a service provider. This is one of the few times where you would have an opportunity to specifically talk about EVV in a setting amongst a bunch of your peers that work in the same area. So if there's questions folks have, you're welcome to unmute. I can hop in the chat to see what's in there, but would recommend just probably, oh, there's a question right there. If you start with the free state option, how do you switch to a third-party system in the future?
Good question. Starting with the free state option, get you going, get you used to what's required. And then if you realize that you want to switch, you would email that customer care team at Sandata and provide them information like your registration information, who you are, and that sort of thing, and say, I want to use a different option. And then they'll contact you and get that started with you.
Excellent. Any other questions for Jennifer? Oh, Jan, yeah, go ahead. And then I'll get Juan right afterwards, okay?
Okay, so I have just a single client, and all of our shifts are 24 hours or more. And when I look at the questions under the website, what's the definition of a live-in caregiver, it does say that if somebody is there and they're scheduled 24 hours at a time or more, then doing EVV is not a requirement. Now, I sent a note to Jennifer's, I think it was Jennifer's group after the last meeting last week, and the response I got was not definitive, so I'm asking you.
And Jan, I wrote that response, and I will reiterate what I told you, but then I will also I'll put a dollar on it for you. So it is the provider's responsibility to determine which of their staff need to comply with EVV. Taking that into consideration, providers who reside in the home for longer than 24 hours and are available to provide care during that time do not need to collect EVV data. That leaves a wide conversation. The department can't tell you who those providers are in very specific situations. It's for the provider agency to determine if that applies. And then what I would recommend is connecting with your regional center to assure that your interpretation is in line with what they are seeing as well for your situation. Because you always want to be on the same page with your regional center.
Right.
But the department can't give you specific information about your situation. But the things I would consider is if someone is there 24 hours or longer and they are available to provide care during that time frame, that would be a good conversation to have with a regional center.
Delia, I will call you.
And it might be helpful, Jan. Let's say you've got that one client, but you've got 5 staff. Maybe that definition doesn't apply to all of them. Maybe it just applies to a couple of them. So being very clear as a provider about which of the staff you've determined will comply and which of the staff won't comply and why, I think will be very helpful for you going forward.
Okay.
Well, Jan, you and Odelia just volunteered to co-present at our next vendor forum. So we'll make sure that the two of you guys, because again, these are the like Jennifer makes a great point. DDS doesn't know specifically what goes on out in the homes in our community and things like that. It's hard for them to speak to those specific arrangements. And when they do try to give something definitive, if they're not familiar with exactly the way it goes, things can get misinterpreted. And so, Odelia, for example, on the other hand, one of our community services specialists, there is an expectation that she knows more of what goes on specifically in those home settings. And so I'm going to talk. Yeah, Olivia, let's not forget about that. Next time we do a vendor forum, let's make sure we bring up that question so that if others have the similar thing, we can help out. I think I said Juan was next. If you want to unmute yourself, Mr. Velasquez.
All right. Thank you so much. Jennifer, one thing, for the IHSS, I understand that it's not until 2023, January. So there will be a gap, if I'm not mistaken, on the hours that are not being covered on the SLS. I'm talking about SLS. And, so how disregard completely those hours that that are not being accounted for, because the not until 2023, January 2023, is that we will be required to provide that information. Now, looking forward to that, there will be more training. Is that because it's going to be another department for staff? And how is that going to be? I know that DDS has nothing to do with IHSS, but you do. But how would that? How will vendors face that?
What does that mean for me? Yes, absolutely. It's a good question. And I think the first thing I'll do is I'll clarify some dates and some services. So phase one and how they implement, so in-home support services will be completely communicated to you through DSS, and sometimes the county will reach out, but that's how you're going to get your information about in-home support services. So I can't speak to that. But what I can tell you is that as part of phase two, I heard you mention SLS and HHS. So support services or anything supported rested living services, homemaker, those were to be in place January 1st of this year, 2022. So if you provide services under those service codes that John listed at the beginning of the meeting, now's your time. It's your turn. You need to be on that website registering and providing data. If you provide services for nursing, home health, speech, occupational therapy, or physical therapy, those are considered home health services. And it's not your turn yet. Now, if you do both, you're going to register now for one piece. And within the next few months, you're going to start getting communications about how to get updated and register for your home health services that you're providing. And those have to be registered in compliance and going by January 1st of 2023. So even within the department, we've broken it up into two pieces: the personal care services, which is 2022, and the home health services, which is January in 2023. And the reason we did that is because all the departments have a little bit of both. And so we needed to split up the workload a little bit to get it rolled out and implemented over a course of time. But also because the Cures Act allows us those deadlines to implement in two pieces. So those dates are pretty specific to the Cures Act. And everything will be up and running and going by January 1st of 2023.
And one of my main concerns is that when our employees will be the majority of our employees do IHSS and SLS hours.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a mess trying to that they understand that in where, okay, well, do not worry about your IHSS hours, but just provide the information for SLS. It's a process in where quite a bit of mistakes are, the will are being done. I'm so how you um that's part of, I guess it's part of the training, and it is, of getting everybody on the same page.
Right, I would agree, Ron. And I think if you have staff that provide both services, understanding their responsibility for right now for the SLS services, there is training available specifically to staff or DSPs. It's called data capture, and there's webinars available that they can register for. It's about a half an hour, I think, course, and it shows them, if you're using the Cal EVV system, mind you, that's what we would provide training on. And it is how to capture a visit in using a telephone, how to capture a visit using an app on your phone. If you're using an alternate system, maybe talk with them to see if there's any provider training. But if you're using another system, chances are you're already capturing this information because it's already tied somehow to possibly your staff's time or timesheets and that kind of thing. So really the training that we have in place right now from the state is for Cal EVV users. And that's available to you after about 48 hours after you self-register.
Okay.
So we're a few months out, it looks like, from the home health, that aspect of it starting to roll out. And
Correct.
certainly I'm sure DDS will have some additional information that will go out related to that as well. So as always, our commitment to you as service providers is once we hear that information coming in, we will ensure that we get it directly out to you all so that we're not, so that we're well prepared for January of 2023. We are at a point now where we are at 11:58, which is usually when we start winding things down. What I would like you guys all to do is make sure that you have that email address so that you can email questions to Jennifer and her team specifically about this. And I want to share with folks that we have some more agenda items that we're going to have to go over next week. I think we're going to be sending out some information to you all regarding upcoming meetings with DDS. There's if you're a transportation vendor, there's a specific rate study meeting that's coming up. And again, as we always talk about, you can go on DDS's website to the front page, and when you go there, you can see the different events that are upcoming for DDS. And in this case, the upcoming events are right here. And we always want to encourage you to look at what's being offered and provide your feedback to the Department of Developmental Services. There's an unprecedented amount of money coming into our system for new services and supports for people with developmental disabilities in a lot of different areas. And so I would just say, don't be left out of the discussion. It impacts you as service providers a whole lot, these different decisions that are being made. And when it comes to actual implementation at a level connecting with clients, we have to have service provider input because you guys know how a lot of these things work and how they should work and what's realistic and what's not realistic. And the department appreciates that feedback. I know we appreciate that feedback. So I am going to stop sharing my screen real quick. I think we can all say thank you to Jennifer Parsons for taking this time to especially, increase our understanding of this, both our staff and all of our service providers. And in the chat, we have that DDS will have the next EVV webinar on February 22nd. And I think that Jennifer probably hopes that all of us can tune in and either be there or make sure that we watch the recording. And for those of you that are part of these service codes, when the information gets posted next week by DDS about their meeting that they had on Tuesday, we will send the link out to everyone so that you have it as well. And Jennifer,
for the invitation. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We really, really appreciate it. Bye, folks. We'll talk to you later. Take care.
Thank you so much.